It's exciting for me to be here for a lot of reasons. I see a lot of familiar faces in this place. I turn around and I see faces I've known for years and people I've worked with, people who've taught me about what it is to be an advocate for change in this world. You know, one of the greatest things that ever happened to me in my life and has helped me to understand what the needs are of people is I grew up in East LA in an inner city neighborhood, lived in a project to start with, and then moved to an 800 square foot house that we thought was a palace. Grandma and Grandpa were there a lot of the time. Mom and Dad, my sister, my brother. And I thought it was normal for everybody to be pushed to have education. I thought it was normal for everybody to be enabled to make a difference in this world. My father had an interesting background. First of all, he was born and raised, he's a Roman Catholic, he became a Jesuit, and then left the order when he discovered what the word celibacy meant. Thank God. In doing that, he ended up marrying a woman who, as I said to my brothers and sister over here at this table, branded on my bottom social justice. I mean, I feel every time when I got a little reticent about doing things, I felt her hand go, "Come on, boy. Come on, boy." And any of us who've had strong mothers know what a great force our mothers are in our life. My father and mother taught us all three of us, to think about other human beings as if they were the presence of the holy in our life. As if we saw them, we were seeing the holiness of God. And that we could not allow the holiness of God to suffer in any way. When I was a young guy, I did a lot of things. My mom used to say to me over and over again, "John, you're nothing but an entrepreneur. You're supposed to be a preacher." Well, all the good entrepreneur preachers I've ever known are guys like Ched Myers and guys like Jamie Edwards Acton, and guys like Keith Yamamoto, guys like Ched Myers, guys like Martin Luther King, guys like Cecil Murray, who was one of my greatest idols. People who understood that, yes, they could be in positions of power, but when they assumed that power, they had to take on responsibility. I worked 17 years of my pastoral life as a non-stipendiary. I'm not bragging about that, but I worked as 2 other jobs in order to provide the resources for my congregation so that they could do the things that were exciting, initiatives that built things up. I had a bishop, and he told me that I was going to take this job, even though I was working as a pastoral associate at another congregation and working 2 jobs to live. He said, "You're going to take this little inner city church that's the first church in the Diocese of Los Angeles." In fact, last Christmas, 150 years ago, was the first service of the Episcopal Church here in Los Angeles at that congregation. In fact, if you walk out the door here and you look at the City Hall, it's over there on New High Street where it was originally. It drifted all over this town, but it had one common purpose: to make things different for people. Well, it had forgotten that purpose. When I went to that congregation, there were 17 people who were fighting about sexuality, fighting about gangs, fighting about race, fighting about the separation between the classes. And I thought, what in God's name am I doing here? And the bishop said, "Well, if you ever want to work in the Diocese of Los Angeles as a clergy person, you're going to go there and you're going to do that job." My wife and I grew up in front of that place. And what we saw was this decrepit old wood frame church and weeds that were 3 foot high. And my wife says, "You got to be kidding me." And I said, "Nope." But the most important thing we did is we went in to that church. Mary, my wife, who's probably the heart of my life and the guider of that heart, she said to me, as we were driving down to the first services we were going to take there, to actually the first meetings we were going to have there, she said to me, "The only thing we can do is just love the socks off these people. Love them as we love each other. Love Him as we love our God. And so we started that process. That place went from being a place of conflict and shaken to a place of abundance. What we did is we sat down with the people and talked to them about what are the needs in this community that we need to deal with. First thing they said is, oh, we need to take care of our worshiping community. And I said, what are you going to do about what God calls you to do? About bearing one another's burdens? What are you going to do about the gangs in this area? What are you going to do about people who are hungry? Well, that was the beginning of a wonderful step on my part that I didn't know I was taking. Those people immediately started a food pantry that's now grown to one of the largest food distribution pantries in Southern California in St. Athanasius, where Frank Alton is the pastor now. They started feeding people, and not just meals, because that didn't work. Providing for them staples, feeding them, delivering them from their hunger. I don't know about you, but I do know about myself. 2 times in my life, I've been really hungry. I saw my parents go without eating so I could eat. And then I repeated that again when I was in seminary. Didn't have any resources. Had 2 children, was a single father. And all of a sudden, I needed to make sure they were eating healthy. I was their cook and bottle washer. And the fact of life is, I didn't know how important my treating them the way I treated them, cherishing them in the way I did, making sure they were fed, would transform their life. But it has. It's made them social justice advocates, and they don't have a brand on their bottom. They do what they do by choice. That congregation I talked about, they do what they do by choice. Even to this day, we have that huge feeding program. But in addition to that, before anybody knew what HIV was, we had 46 members of our congregation dying. Because the Episcopal Church is an inclusive church. But it wasn't so inclusive back then because people had to hide. But these people said, what are we going to do? Are we going to catch something? And we brought people in, we talked about it. We talked about what healthcare was, what caused this virus to be passed. And in 1985, remember when HIV started? In 1985, we started the first AIDS posada in this area. We brought people marching down the street, making sure that these people were cared for, advocating, being social justice monitors. And we started that program in such a way that people were fed. They were nourished. They had caretakers in their homes. And it was before there was a system within the county health department. It was people doing what God called them to do. And you know, there's everybody in this room is here for a different reason. I don't care what your faith is, but you do have faith. I had a guy yesterday when I was at the Jonathan Club, a fancy club right down here, and I was giving a speech, and he said, I was talking about faith, and he said, I don't have any faith. He said, I don't believe in God. This was one of the first questions I got after I was done speaking. And I said, you don't? Have you been pretty successful in your life? And he said, yes. And I said, what drove you toward that success? The desire in my breast to make things happen for the people in my family. And I said, well, you trusted in your family. You trusted in the community around you. You built a business that helps other people do things. I think you have faith, but you don't even know what the hell to call it. Each and every one of us, an individual, can be an individual, and we're called to be wonderful and unique, just like the 10 digits on my fingers. But we can't get much accomplished. I don't know if any of you have ever played a sport in your life, but I wasn't too good at baseball. I did other sports like football real well. You stick a guy my size out in the field and put it at somebody, they're going to knock him down. But with baseball, I used to jam my fingers all the time. When I had a jammed finger, that finger wasn't as a tinker's jam. I realized after a little while that we as individuals have a lot to offer. Our uniqueness is magnificent. But when we intertwine our lives together in prayer, we touch one another. And our hearts are joined, and we can see common needs and go after those common needs. But what's more important is when we intertwine ourselves with each other. We can't be rent asunder. If you put your hands like that, you'll feel that it's just simple physics, that you can't just pull away. What you have to do is decide to walk away. And what the people here in this room have decided, and what we've decided in the Episcopal Church, is not to walk away, but to extend a hand in comfort and love, nourishment, and power to other people around us. I believe that society benefits if other people have the ability to care for their families. I believe that society benefits if there is neither Jew nor Greek, slave nor free, Islamic, black, white. I was telling my sister and brothers at the table over there that there was a long time, one of my staff members made a crack about, well, he's sort of white. And for years, I tried to hide from the fact that I have a grandmother who's Ethiopian. I had to try to overcome that. Because I don't know any of you are as old as me in this room. There probably aren't any. But when I was growing up, that wasn't the best thing to be. It wasn't until my mother challenged me. It wasn't until my father challenged me that I was willing to own and be proud of who I was as a human being. Well, I'm equally proud to be a Christian as I am to be a multiracial man. I was in the hospital recently, 2 years ago, and I have all these friends in healthcare, and I got the best care in the world. And they checked me out, and I'm chairman of the board of a hospital. They checked me out at the hospital I'm chairman of the board at, and then they sent me to City Pool because I was known as AML5, leukemia. And the guy came in at 5 o'clock in the morning and said to me, "You're going to die." I said, "That's comforting." He says, "You have a 1% chance of living." I said, "Whoa." And I'm a very rational kind of guy. And I thought about that and I said, well, I've lived a good life. I'm 65, 66 years old, 66 at the time. And I said, I've lived a good life. I've watched many families bankrupted by the lack of health care. You know, I had pretty good health care. But I knew that this treatment that ended up being over $2 million was going to be something that was going to take and put my family in a hole. It was about that time that I thought, we've already been doing health care stuff. We better do some stuff to make people healthier. In 2003, we started with the religious leaders of Los Angeles, Islamic, Christian, and Jewish faith members, and we developed an initiative. And that initiative was a theological reflection on the right to health care. Now, I got to tell you, when we started doing that, we never known we were going to get ourselves in so much trouble, but we did. Because we started advocating back in 2003 to take and provide health care for every individual in the world. Not just the United States, but in the world. By 2005, we developed a good theological statement, and if any of you want it, you can email me at at Bishop Bruno, what is that called? Bishop at ladiocese.org, and we'll send you a copy of the report. We'll send it by email, so we don't cut any trees in. In doing that, we came to a heightened awareness, and people from the, from the California Endowment, Dr. Bob and a bunch of others helped us to see that there were things we could start doing in our parishes, in our missions. We developed a mission opportunity for people to be parish nurses. And we found out that that was already going on. And all we had to do was participate. It didn't cost a lot of money, but again, to get people cared for. We also dealt recently with the Community Health Council, and we acted as a member working a contract for the county, thank you ma'am, and providing information to all of our parishes in the inner city area in a specific census tract area. That spread. All of a sudden, it became the arm of Affordable Care Act, teaching people that there were ways to have insurance and that they didn't have to go bankrupt or be blown away by an illness that would come on their family. And I don't know, but I would guess that every human being in this room has had your life touched by a cancer, by heart disease, by obesity, by something that has taken a loved one from you. I lost my father at a very early age. In fact, this year was a little difficult for me because he died at 67, and I couldn't wait till my 68th birthday. You know, that may sound crazy, but I dealt with my spiritual director and my counselor. And the fact of life is, when I got past that, I got kicked into gear, and I wanted to start all over. And I've only got 4 more years to work before they throw me out of the church, because at 72 they make you retire. That's the dumbest thing I ever heard. Cecil Murphy's not retired. Malcolm Boyd, the man who took me to march from Selma to Montgomery, he's not retired. He works for me. He's 92 years old. We as human beings have a responsibility, not just because of our faith, but because of our care for humanity and everyone around us. We need to touch other people's lives. I'm going to go back to being in the hospital, laying in that bed. That was a unique experience. I'm a pretty big boy. I played athletics all my life, did all sorts of things, been a missionary overseas. In fact, brought back a disease from Africa that infected my bones in the right side of my body. And finally I said to the doctor, "Can't you kill this thing?" And he said, "I don't know. We've been working at it for 18 months. I said, "What will give me the best odds of survival so I can continue the ministry I have?" And he said, "Cut it off." I said, "Well, what's been taking you so long?" "Cut it off." So I was an amputee. Heighten my sense of awareness about other amputees in this world. Heighten my sense of awareness about other people who needed treatment and couldn't get it. I had all the benefits. But if I had them, my sisters and brothers deserved them. That inspired me to start opening my mouth. Not start, keep opening my mouth. Obviously I do that well. And helping other people to accomplish the care and nurture of everyone around you. You know, it says very clearly that we are to love the Lord our God with all our heart and soul and mind, and our neighbor as ourselves. Well, my problem in my life is I try to love my neighbor more than I love myself. Okay. But then I came to the importance, laying in that bed in that hospital, that I better take care of me, because I wasn't going to be around to love the people around me as God loved me. I wasn't going to be around to make sure that people had healthy food, or they had water that was clean, that they had social justice rights, no matter who they were. It is important that we move to a place in our lives where we touch other people's lives, and that's a transforming touch. Tim, who's one of the directors on our staff, thanks. You agree? Okay. Thank you, man. Appreciate it. I saw you sneaking up here. I thought you were coming. And Tim and I were talking about those kind of things just a few minutes ago. And I grew up working on my grandfather's farm. I was an inner city boy living here in LA. And my mom and daddy tried to get me out of town every summer and every Christmas. And the reason they did that is because I was getting in a little bit of trouble. But I learned what it was to work on that chicken ranch and farm. I never want to see a chicken's behind again in my life. For 5 years of my life, I mucked that place. But I sat down every night, clean as a whistle, with my grandfather and grandmother, and learned how to be a family as well as what I was learning at home. We have an obligation to one another. Tim came into my room when I was at City of Hope. My wife, she came in after I sat down with the kids and her and told them I was going to not take treatment, that I'd done all that God intended me to do, and I was going to go on. I really believe what he preaches in the Scriptures. I have a place to go home to. I'm going to become part of the ground of all being. Maybe it's not going to be with gold paved streets and halos and all that stuff, but I'm going to be part of that Godhead again. I'm going to be, in essence, part of God. And she said, we'd like to talk to you. And I said, who's we? It's you and me. And we're in an isolation room. And we all have masks on, and all I can see is eyes. And she said, you need to take me seriously. And being married for almost 30 years at that time, I looked into her eyes, and I better take her seriously. And she said, who's the we? I said, who's the we? And she brought in one of the foremost hematologists in the world, his name was Dr. Foreman, and his associate, Dr. Popplewell, who became my doctor, and brought him in and said, we want you, she said this, she said, we want you to give us 7 weeks. And I said, honey, we've been through this. I've dealt with so many people, cared for them as they were dying of cancer in 35, 37 years of pastoring. I said, our family doesn't need this. We love God, we love each other, and we've got abundance to share with others. What I heard her say, look at man, you're going to suffer for me for 7 weeks. You're not going to chicken out here, you're going to try. Well, at the end of that 7 weeks, I was metabolically clear. That which couldn't be done was done by the love of my community, by prayer, by good doctors, by experimental treatment, and by sticking me in a room and not letting me out. During that period of time, all sorts of things started running through my mind. It was after that 7 weeks that I got together with Tim and I said, hey, man, let me tell you, I got an idea. I said, I don't know what to do with this, but we have a responsibility to make sure that there's food in everybody's mouth. We have a responsibility to make sure that people have all the health care they need. We need to make sure that people are trained to go out and teach other people how to cook. We have a great cook in this room, a guy who goes out and teaches people cooking classes. And I said, but I don't know how to do that. And I knew what Tim's background was. He came from a large farming family in the Central Valley and had skills that I never knew about. And so I said to him, I got this guy I want you to meet. He was my endocrinologist because I've been a diabetic since I was young. And I want you, I got 2 minutes, okay, I saw you. It's nice to get the biggest guy in the room. Until the second biggest guy in the room, you got 2 minutes. I said, I want you to meet this guy. In walks Dr. Ray Samoa, and these two people don't even let me introduce you to each other. They jump up, they throw their arms around each other, and they're hugging away. Obviously, they knew each other before this. And that was the start of the Seeds of Hope program. I want to close by telling you one thing. We all have the power to change this world. We all have the ability to make things better for the community around us. And if we don't, we're laughing in the face of God. We're laughing in the face of our community and telling them that they're not worthy of care. Those eyes that I saw over those masks, for that period of time, I knew. I knew when people were hurting. I knew when they were in need, even though that's all I could see. My closing anecdote, and it's going to take 30 seconds longer than you want, is that there's a young man in my family, my son, Philip, he's our baby, and he's taken in a buddy of his who needed to get out of a situation that he was in and needed to leave a very good job he had, but to start a new career far away from where he was. He brought him into his house. He lived there for about 4.5 months, and just before Christmas came down with bacterial meningitis. He was bare. Didn't have health insurance. He was getting good food. He didn't have health insurance. And I said, Philip, there is a system that will get help for this young man. And I learned that. I learned that from Dr. Bob over at the California Endowment. I learned that from the Community Health Council. I learned that from people on my staff. Well, we got him to the hospital. They told us he was going to die. And yesterday I had lunch with him. And now he has health insurance under Cover California.
makes a difference in our own lives. And I ask you to bless me by working as hard as you can be